What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of XP Reviews. This time, we are finally sitting down and discussing our thoughts, opinions, and score on the much-anticipated Resident Evil 4 Remake. I'm one of your reviewers, Mike Z. Joining me above the screen is my co-host of the XP podcast, the Birdman himself, Logan B.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the exciting, probably our fourth ever video game review. Yeah, fourth one? Fifth? Holy crap. So yeah, this is really exciting.
DJ and I did that Stray one.
Yes, yep, okay.
Yeah.
So this is really exciting. Especially this is such an interesting one because it's a remake, and we have one person that is down below me that has been the classic, and then you have me who is the newbie to the RE4 game. So it's gonna be interesting to see both of our point of views. I know I'm saying that as if that's gonna make things interesting, but I'm just saying it is pretty interesting to see two different point of views. So yeah, I don't have much more to say other than I'm ready to get into it, talk about it. I do want to throw that out, this out there real quick to people. The way we're doing this one is we're not gonna split it between spoiler and not, because the game technically has been out since 2005, so you probably have had it spoiled to you by now. If you for some reason haven't, and you've been lucky, and you maybe never played the remake or the classic, I would recommend you go play it yourself. Spoiler alert, I would just recommend you go play it yourself.
Yeah. There'll be a short section where we give our overall thoughts and we put a score on it. Where technically there's no spoilers, at least in my write-up, there's no spoilers. So I guess you guys will get 5 minutes of non-spoilers. But yeah, once we get into the deep dive of this game, most of my things I'm going to be talking about are like comparisons and how things have changed, where things are different, and then I'll link that in with overall why it's so good, or why I think it's bad in certain scenarios and situations. So, but everything will be in the timestamps down below. Go ahead and check it out. Skip to the review after you played the game, or if you don't care, then stick with us, I guess. So, all right. Well, before we jump into it, if you do like this review and you like what we have to say here and want to hear more from us on the XPerience Point, go check out the XP Podcast, our weekly video game and pop culture news podcast, where Logan and myself sit down with y'all and talk about all the news stories and happenings inside and out of the video game world. We post a new episode each and every week, so you guys get to listen to it whenever you want. Those episodes are actually doing pretty good ever since we started the face cam. That you were very green for a second.
Yeah, no, don't worry about it.
Ever since we started the face cam, we've been seeing good engagement. People seem to be liking it. Still waiting for people to engage a whole lot. So if you're hearing us for the first time and you agree with what we have to say, even if you disagree with what you have to say, talk to us down below. We love talking about video games. That's why we do this show. That's why we sit down each and every week, sometimes multiple times a week, and just get to talk about video games with my good friend and buddy and hopefully lifelong compatriot. So, all right, before we jump into it, though, we always give you guys a little rundown of what the game is, if you don't know. If you have absolutely no clue and are never going to play it and just want to know what it's about, here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, Resident Evil 4 was released on March 24th for the PS4 and 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Resident Evil 4, 2005's legendary survival horror game, is brought fully up to date in its ground-up remake. Set 6 years after the events of Resident Evil 2, Raccoon City survivor Leon Kennedy has been dispatched to a secluded European village to investigate the disappearance of the U.S. president's daughter. What he discovers there is unlike anything he has faced before. Every aspect of the classic game has been updated for the current generation, from modernized graphics and controls to a reimagined storyline that may surprise even hardcore fans of the original game. That's me. Alright, so ladies and gentlemen, that is what we're reviewing. Resident Evil 4. Everyone knows it out there. Everyone can't wait to hear I'm sure maybe a couple people can't wait to hear what we have to say. So as a newbie, I'm going to have you lead with your overall thoughts and scores, and then I will come in at the end, and then we'll celebrate whatever this game gets. So, Mr. Birdman, let everybody know. For the first time, we've had little snippets here and there. We've talked about it throughout the episodes, but let everybody know, euphorically, what you think about Resident Evil 4.
All right. So, as a little summary, Resident Evil 4 is truly one of the most fun video games I have played in a while. From the insane action set pieces with nail biting combat mixed with horror, it truly was a roller coaster of emotions. When I reached the end of Resident Evil 4, it left me feeling like I experienced a truly badass adventure. And so, what I gave it as my final score is a 9 out of 10, which is awesome and reaches that gold trophy. And obviously, throughout this episode, you'll be learning on why we gave these scores. We'll be explaining pretty much more in depth on why we think this. So, depth.
Depth. All right,
Yeah.
so 9 out of 10, gold trophy. It's good to hear. I'm glad. Here is my overall thoughts and score, and stay with me. There was a long write-up I had here. I edited this like 5 times to get it right, so. Ladies and gentlemen, Resident Evil 4 was once one of my favorite games of all time, and it gives me great joy to say that it once again holds a similar spot in my heart, destined to remain there for years to come. It really is difficult to sum up the brilliance of this game in just a paragraph or two, but here it goes. Resident Evil 4 is a masterpiece beyond masterpieces. From the sublime updated combat, which feels right at home in today's modern gaming landscape, to the revamped level design, which simultaneously tightens the scope of the game while giving its players breath to explore the updated world, where new and old fans alike can marvel at all its grandeur and spectacle. To the characters that are more fleshed out with complete backstories and motivations, all the way to the intricate weapon, treasures, and inventory system that buoy the brilliance of this instant classic made anew. 18 years after it first graced us with its presence, Resident Evil 4 returns to the video game industry and makes a bold statement to all. Resident Evil 4 is the best Resident Evil game. RE4 is the best third-person survival action game. And Resident Evil 4, in this reviewer's opinion, is still one of, if not the greatest game ever made. If I could go higher, I would shoot for the moon, but it would behoove me to make light of the astounding feat that Capcom and its developers have pulled off here by undermining the sacredness of our review score. Therefore, I am relegated to simply give Resident Evil 4 a 10 out of 10 and bestow it with the XPerience Point's highest accommodation, our Platinum Trophy. My first 10 out of 10. You're muted.
Yep. I am now. Yep. Yeah. Hell yeah. Okay.
I will dive into it here, but this, for me, was just a complete and utter rejustification of why I love this game so much for so long. There's only been one game to ever top the original Resident Evil 4, and that was God of War. And when we sit down to make our top 10, I'm going to have to really, really think hard, because it wasn't even really that much of a thought. I mean, I think God of War is significantly better than classic Resident Evil 4. But for me, for everything that they were able to pull off with here, for all the character developments and everything, we'll dive deep into it here in a couple minutes. To me, this is what a 10 out of 10 game is for my taste and my likes. And this is something that I'm going to hold all the other games up to, is this, especially in this style of game. I don't really think it gets much better, in my opinion. And games that I've played a lot of these games, and I really can't think of something that I had more enjoyment or that I loved more than playing this game. And obviously the game that it was remade. So there you go. My first 10 out of 10, a platinum trophy. My second platinum trophy. I also gave a platinum trophy to God of War Ragnarok. So I really thought you were going to give it your third 10 out of 10.
I was really close.
I really thought you were going to get it there.
I literally was so close to giving it my 10 out of 10 but there are some, like, it literally is so close. Like, it's on the brink of being that 10 out of 10 for me. And it's really hard because I almost want to switch it to 10 out of 10 since you said it, because it is, by the way, guys, spoiler alert, this game is fucking awesome. Like, come on now. Like, it really is really good. And again, this is from like a newbie standpoint. I never played the classic, that's okay. I actually let me spew out a real quick of the few games that I played that were Resident Evil that I actually completed. Resident Evil 5, a game that I know especially people don't like, is Operation Raccoon City, which, by the way, I do kind of like that game. I know it's not good, but it was really cool. Um, and Resident Evil 6, part of Resident Evil 6. That's it. Yeah, I think that's literally the only Resident Evil games I ever beat. So, yeah.
You want to hear the Resident Evil games that I beat?
Yeah, go on.
It started with RE3 Nemesis, actually, on the PS1. I didn't get into it before then. Then I backtracked, played RE2. Then I played RE Remake when it came out on the GameCube. Then Code
Yep.
Veronica. Well, actually, in timeline, Code Veronica. I skipped over Zero because I was kind of out of it because I didn't hear about Zero until after RE4. So then I played RE4, 5, 6, 7, RE2 Remake, RE3 Remake, RE4 Remake, RE8. I like this franchise a lot, and I think I don't know. It's hard to explain. It's just, like you said, your very first sentence, this game is just fun. Yes, we can talk about all the bluster and grandeur that it is, but it is simply just enjoyable to play. It just feels amazing. All right, let's jump into. By the way, I do have criticisms. Everything's not, I've always said a 10 out of 10 for me
But yeah,
is a masterpiece
like I
in
mean, same
game.
thing for me. Like
No
for
game
example,
is
I
perfect
gave
for me. So
Elden Ring a 10 out of 10, but is it completely and utterly flawless? No, but it is easily one of the best games I've ever played in my life.
yeah,
So,
perfect.
and I've learned that from you, especially if you guys really want to go for a whole back, go to the first episode and hear me bitch and complain about Elden Ring, and then play it, and it ended up being one of my favorite games of all time. It's just so funny because I really jumped the shark with that one, I guess, because like I literally just I bought that game on the fly. I had no impressions other than some videos, and I ended up loving it. So that's a whole different topic. But yeah, I've changed my mind on what I think of 10 out of 10. So, but I have some flaws with this that do kind of bring it down just a little bit,
That's
just
fair.
that little bit. It's on that edge
I mean,
of being a
that's
10 out of
the
10.
same thing that I did with God of War Ragnarok. I was super
Yeah.
critical of that, and I couldn't give it a 10 because I don't think it's better than the first game, and the first game is a 10 in my eyes. So, all right,
Yeah.
but enough talking about games that we've already reviewed. Let's finish
Mhm.
up with not finish up. We got a long way to go. Let's keep talking about this game and all spoilers and everything. So, guys, like we said at the top of this, if you haven't played this game at all, if you've never played the original, if you've never played this one and you plan on playing this one, just know I can't recommend this thing more to any individual out there that likes any sort of video games. Maybe I won't recommend it to someone's like, oh, I play Call of Duty and Madden. Probably not going to enjoy this one. But if you like just general video games and being told a story and fun gameplay, if you haven't gotten this yet, just drive to the store, pick it up right now, support Capcom and what they're doing here, because I really do think they are quickly making the way up the ladder of some of my most trusted developers. And I can't wait to see what they do next, whether it be a remake or whatever RE9 ends up being. So my biggest recommendation I've ever made is go play this game. Any last thing before we jump into everything else?
I don't think so.
All
No.
right. All right. Well, here it is. It's spoiler talk. It's time to go. All right. I don't know how you want to organize this. I just have a bunch of notes scribbled everywhere, kind of
I kind of
organized in a
keep it in
way.
the same method I always do. I do from good to meh to bad. But let's kind of try to keep things in category here. So let's start with the most important thing in any video game, and that is gameplay first and foremost. Um, so if you want me, do you want me to start, or do you want to start? Because
Go ahead.
okay. So as a newbie to this game, and my first time playing, I gotta say, guys, like, again, the most important thing in any video game, the thing that makes a video game great, is gameplay first and foremost. And this game, dude, I'm telling you, is so much fun. It's so freaking addicting. It's absolutely phenomenal. Gunplay feels really good. Combat feels exhilarating, and it's kind of nail biting at times with the insanity of the amount of enemies that are thrown at you. It just feels awesome. And I just want to go back and tell you guys this. I beat the game 2.5 times, and I'm telling you, I still want to go back and play it again. That's something for a video game. That I haven't had that kind of a feeling about a video game since probably like when I was in high school. Like it's kind of crazy. I usually don't go back and play through video games again most of the time. Like even Red Dead, one of my favorite games of all time. I've only beat it once. Um, it also kind of helps that this game's shorter. It's not a super long game. It's so for me it was 16 hours of my first playthrough. If you're a completionist and you're trying to do every single little tiny objective, it's like 22 to 23, like Mike. Um, but this just the combat feels so good, and I know I don't know much about the classic, but I do know some of the differences. And I will say one change that I especially love is the knife. I love this implementation of the fact that you could parry attacks. I also like that your knife. I know some people may not like it because the classic knife didn't break. I love the fact the knife breaks because then it doesn't make you just always rely on it, because if you always completely rely on that knife the entire game, then the game's gonna be stupid easy in my opinion. So with it breaking and your knives actually having durability makes things a little bit more exciting and crazy, because you could be blocking all day, but as soon as that knife breaks, you got nothing. You can try to button mash your way out of attacks, but you're gonna get destroyed. And again, it's just like that first part of the game where you get put into this village. It's just so crazy feeling and so badass, because you're literally just you're like, oh, you're Leon Kennedy. You're almost like you're like role playing that you do not know anything. You're just like him. And your first attack in the game is so cool because like you don't expect that guy to come down the stairs and attack you, and that part is pretty damn terrifying the first time through. And then when you finally make it to the big old village and you see like the cop getting burned and everything, and you go in, and then all of a sudden, all you get and below is survive. And I'm like, okay. And then there's so many directions to go, and like there's a lot of enemies rushing you, and it gets really crazy because like they're like very aggressive in this game. That's another thing I know that's changed is because you don't stand still anymore while shooting. Enemies are far more aggressive in this game, like stupidly aggressive. They will literally sprint at you, and it is so terrifying, and it's a lot going on at once. But it's just so addicting because it's like, especially when you finally do really get the hang of it and everything, and it really doesn't take that long to get a hang of it. It's not a really, in my opinion, difficult game to learn. Maybe that's just because I played a lot of video games in my time. Um, it really isn't. And but when you do get into the game and you get in the rhythm, you could really just kind of, I don't know, like it has this freedom of like how you want to um what is it? More like the freedom on how you want to do each situation that you get into. Because, like I said, this game's like a roller coaster of just everything. Like anything you could think of, this game has it. It's just so much happens in it, and like with each moment, you can tackle it in any way you want. If you want to be super stealthy, well, they added that to this game, and you could be a lot more stealthy than could in the classic. If you want to be guns blazing, which is usually how I play, I just got into the fight and everything, and then like obviously even another very I know I'm jumping around, but another thing that helps with tackling the situations is the fact that they brought back the classic, the OG, the best of all, the freaking briefcase. And the cool thing is you can literally technically customize your loadout and pick the way that you want to tackle each situation and what weapons you care about. Like for me, for example, I didn't like the bolt gun. I literally never used it in my 2.5 playthroughs because I just didn't like it. So that's something probably different than what Mike probably did. He probably ended up using the bolt gun. I've seen some gameplays of people. Okay, so I've seen some other
No, I
people
didn't,
though
but
that
I
were,
get what you're saying.
and I've seen some other people like where they have like because they let you take off the scope now on the rifles. People actually use the rifles a lot more than like I did. For me, I didn't really use the rifle that much. I only used it when someone was far away. I mostly used the shotgun, TMP, and pistol. Those are my three amigos. That was my whole game for me. But there were some people that really loved the rifles in the game, and so they would make their entire briefcase load out with, like 2 rifles. They would have the semi-auto and the bolt. I know that may be impractical, but that's the thing about it. It's the freedom of that. The freedom of like how you want to set up your case. How well do you want to have it organized? I'm a bit of a clutter. Mike probably does a little bit better job of organizing his gear. And also, by the way, there's a game in this with the fact that sorting out your briefcase and putting things where they are, and when you notice it's filled up, but you're like, oh, I got that one spot, what if I switch this weapon this way and move this there, and then you finally have enough space now to put that object. It's so satisfying and so cool and just super enjoyable, and again, it never gets boring. Now, there is a mode for auto sort, and I'm not here to judge you on how you play the game. I hate when people judge how you play it. If you do not like the whole briefcase sorting thing, then there's an auto sort, and that's cool. It's more accessible, and that's great. So, still, again, I love the way that they have the briefcase. It's so much more open. And speaking of the briefcase, so I'm going to stick on Gabe. Well, actually, you know what? I've been talking too much. Mike, do you have something to say? I feel like I've been just rambling.
Well, no,
So,
I want you to talk a lot because this is
okay.
your first experience. I mean, I'll jump in here and there when I have things to say, but kind of the tree you're barking up a little bit is my mouse is frozen. There it is the inventory system in this game, and I made a comment a couple episodes ago on the podcast itself that I think this is hands down the best inventory system in any video game. And I don't even think it's even close. I
I
don't know
agree with that.
what other inventory system I've ever played that I like remember for years engaging with. Like I consistently always remember engaging with this inventory system, and just like everything else in this game, there are very few things that haven't been tweaked in some way or manner or expanded upon or broadened or whatever adjective you want to throw at it. Even the inventory system, they've changed. They've added these new cases where you can equip different cases to give you more of a chance of getting different resources that you want. Like, if you're doing your handgun only playthrough, then you just run with the handgun
Yeah, and
case.
you can you can get
Yeah,
the handgun like again, that adds to the way that you could tackle the game
yeah.
and your play style.
And
It's
then
so cool.
there's these charms that you get from doing the shooting ranges, and like all that stuff is brand new to this. That wasn't in the original game. The original game was just the case, organize it, upgrade it in terms of size and all that. Um, and all that kind of minute detailing and figuring out is just broaden this combat system, which I think is essentially flawless. Like, I don't have a single problem with the way this game plays or feels or anything like that. And like you were talking about, just the highly customizable way to go about this combat. There are 29 guns in this game, and you said you played mostly with 3. And that's a completely acceptable way
Hmm.
to play this game. Like, I think one of the shining examples, or one of the best things this game does, is it has all those 29 weapons. And no matter which one you use, you can beat this game. There's not a meta. There's not a you have to have this loadout with these guns leveled up all the way. There are technically better guns than other guns. Like, I hate the Punisher. I think it sucks. I've always hated that gun. I think it's terrible. But I've seen
Yeah.
people just destroy with the Punisher because they focus on positioning and enemy movements and things like that, and they set them up that way. And that's a totally acceptable way to play this game. You said you don't like rifles. I used my rifle all the time. I use my
Hmm.
rifle and handgun mostly, and then if I miss a couple shots or they get close or like I hear someone come up behind me, I flip around, shotgun right in the face, and they're usually dead. So, but yeah, I just think and it's sneaky the way it does it. Like it just shows itself as a third person survival action horror game. There's a lot of titles you can throw with this, by the way, because
Hmm.
it's definitely a survival game in the way like inventory management is dealt in. It's definitely an action game, and it definitely has
Yeah.
some of that horror in there. So it's like 18 different games all in one, which I love, and it pulls them all off. But yeah, I think we're barking up the same tree. Is the combat has been so good for so long. And that's not even talking about the things you can do in the combat. Like I said, with positioning, you can do pretty much whatever you want. Enemy has a dynamite stick in their hand. You can blow that dynamite stick up before they even throw it. They have a lamp because it's a dark area. You can shoot that lamp and it catch them on fire. Enemy running at you down a hill. Shoot them in the leg. They'll fall down the hill. You know.
Or, if you see a trap, you can bait them into their own traps
Oh
and
yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah, like, and then Also, if you're one of those people that really want to get them all together, you can gather all them together and get like a headshot and to do a badass roundhouse kick and kick them all off of a cliff if you really want to. It's really just like they give you these arenas or these environments, and then they just say, like, actually, let's go back to a classic here when Ragnarok came out. It's playing with your food. Like, you can really kind of really mess with like the way that you want to tackle each situation because and again it's just so cool. It has so much freedom, and it's so surprising too because like it's literally, it just looks so simple when you're just looking at it, but when you start playing it, it's just so satisfying. um yeah, let me see. I have something else in my notes about this real quick.
Well, like you were talking about kind of the opening section, and I think that's a perfect melting pot of what the rest of this game is in terms of how they've treated this remake. You were talking about that guy coming down the stairs in the opening house, completely brand new.
Mhm.
The original house, it had an upstairs, nothing happened in it. Well, that's not true. It triggered the same type of cutscene, but like you go in, Leon would for some reason would tries to talk to this clearly Spanish dude in English, which I never knew why he
Yeah, no, right.
thought that was a good idea. Uh, he's clearly in this remote Spanish country, and he thinks this dude's gonna understand English when he asks him about the president's daughter. But I mean, the opening cutscene means so much more after you play this game, then you realize, and again, not a part of the original. The game starts up and you're immediately in that car. Just that quick 2-minute opening cutscene to kind of detail what has happened with Leon since his time in Raccoon City, and showing how they create. I'm talking about Sadler and all that. How
Mhm.
this cult creates the Los Plagas, the Los Illuminados, is the name of the cult in this game. And just that small 2 to 3 minute cutscene opens so much up. And then you even get a little bit of backstory with Krauser, which was interesting because in the original game, you didn't really have that much information on Krauser at all. His stories was detailed later in a movie whose name I can't remember. I forgot. I think
Well, there's
I
actually a game that came out that had a little bit more of his backstory.
well,
I
yeah,
think it
and
was a Wii first-person shooter, or
well,
whatever it
yeah,
was.
yeah. There's that
Yeah,
like on rails. That's called Resident Evil Chronicles, I think. That might be it.
think so.
But then
I know I came upon it on YouTube randomly.
there was also a movie that detailed the entire operation that Leon was a part of when Krauser trained him and all that. And so all that happened after RE4. So you never got that
Mhm.
originally. And this game kind of just sucks that all in and says, here is this story. And, throughout this review, we'll talk about how well and how much they've done and treated these characters with the utmost respect, and also essentially just made them more mature people, which in turns makes the story of this game hit a lot harder, which I've always thought the story is very underrated. Like, yes, it's an RE story, and yes, Leon's doing backflips and roundhouses and suplexing these people, but there's also this like serious tale about all these characters, Leon, Ashley, Luis, Krauser, all these characters dealing with the repercussions of the decisions that they've made and the different things that have happened throughout the whole story of Resident Evil. I mean, this game is definitely a sequel to RE2. It feels like a sequel to
Mhm.
RE2, and this one much more than it did in the original. So now I've been talking for a while, so I want to turn it back over to you. But yes, the opening of this game is a perfect melting pot in terms of how they've changed what they've done to broaden this to the nth degree. And I think it's amazing. The first hour of this game, it's so similar, but so much better in so many different ways.
Um, to reel it back a little bit, back to gameplay, just one more time. Um, I just want to throw in that I know I've one other brand new thing to this game is that it is again, never played the original, but it is supposedly more difficult. And it's a harder game than the original was. And in my opinion, I think they did a really good job with the difficulty of this game because I feel like, at least with most of this game, about 99% of it, I think the challenge is fair, and that is the most key thing in making a challenging game. Is it's not just challenging for challenging's sake. Like playing the game, it is difficult, but it's fair. And they always give you the right amount of resources to tackle each section of this game. And it feels really good again. Like it feels satisfying when you get by the, you fight tooth and nail through this situation and you just have enough ammo to get through it. And it's super satisfying. It's really badass. And again, it doesn't there's again 99% of this game feels extremely fair with its combat, with its boss fights and etc. We will be talking about one and there's one boss in mind that is a little bit of an annoyance. Again, I never played him in the original, but we'll get to that real quick. I just want to throw in one more thing that I really love about the gameplay. And I praise this for Elden Ring. I praise this for Ragnarok. It's the enemy variety in this game. I absolutely think it's superb. It is phenomenal. I especially love how they did it in this game. It kind of brings me back to Elden Ring with the fact that, like, throughout the game, you are constantly fighting something new all the way through, beginning to end. You start off with this village, you're like, oh man, this is crazy already. Oh, you move to this next area, you're in a castle now. You have this dude that's a priest that can blow people's heads off and everything. And then you start seeing people's heads explode, and they start to do the Las Plagas, at nighttime when you get to the nighttime area. And then, you get to this next place, which is an island, and there's like a bunch of people with like riot shields and RPGs and stuff. Like, again, it's this constant change throughout the game where it's so exciting. It doesn't get boring. They don't just reuse the same villager throughout the entire game. It's not villagers in the castle, villagers in the military thing. It's just, and we'll be getting to the story, but this game is just so perfectly set up. It's just like a constant excitement and adventure that you are getting throughout this game where it never gets boring and it doesn't overstay its welcome at any moment. And I will be getting into that with story, so that'll probably get brought up one more time again in another way. But yeah, it's just so perfect. Like, I don't know, it's just like I never got bored. I never felt like I was fighting the same things over and over again. It felt like there was something new around every corner, which is perfect. That's great, and that's what makes this game so unbelievably replayable. That, again, I beat it 2.5 times. I still want to beat it my third time, probably fourth time. Who knows how many more times? And it just feels satisfying each time because it never gets boring. It's so exciting and different and just so cool. I love it.
I thought of a metaphor while you were talking about that I think perfectly sums up not just the story, not just the gameplay, and it comes from the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Thanos. This game is perfectly balanced as all things should be. Like, the story doesn't take over for the gameplay, and the gameplay doesn't suffer because of story, and vice versa. And like we were talking about, like, everything, every system that's in this game, the treasure system, the inventory system that we've already touched on, everything operates essentially flawlessly. Like I said, there are small complaints that I have here and there. I'm about to get to one, actually, since we're kind of sticking on the gameplay here a little bit. But everything that's in this game has the fewest flaws that you can come up with. Like, every single intricate system that builds this thing up to a whole of what it is some of the best there is out there. My big complaint, and really the only complaint I have about gameplay in general, everything that accompanies it outside of that boss fight that we'll get to, is I think sometimes this game gets a little lost in the action. It's definitely more action heavy than the original RE4 is. And like you were talking about, it is relentless. It's every single corner you turn around, every single door you open, they're throwing enemies at you. And there were a couple times, I would say maybe 2 or 3 times throughout my 20-hour plus playthrough, where I was like, okay, I don't really want to fight right now. I just want to kind of look around and walk around this castle or this village. And the original game gave you some of those breaks. It had some more puzzle sections, more akin to like old school Resident Evil games, like RE2 and all that. It gave you time to kind of breathe every now and then. This new remake doesn't really have those times to breathe too much. It says you get done with fighting arena, You walk through a corridor or a door of a building, pick up some ammo. Next thing you're out, you're fighting again. It throws you right back into it, which is awesome and it's really fun. But I do think I kind of prefer the original's take a little bit to give you some of those spaces to breathe and some of those spaces to walk around and explore. And that's really the only nitpicky thing I have about the gameplay, and especially focusing on the changes that they made, because I said that's where I'm coming through most of this. I'm looking at the original and looking at this and seeing where things are different and where I like the original, where I like this more. It's mostly this more, but there are a couple things where I was like, I kind of like the more slow pace of the original in a way. And this one, like you said, it's fucking go from the moment you hit start, man. It is pedal to the metal. You're finishing this game, whether you like it or not. And yeah, I think game length for this is just wildly varied. 16 hours for you, 22 hours for me on my first playthrough. My normal Resident Evil 4 playthrough, unless I'm just trying to get through it and run, which I don't ever really play this game like that, is around the 20 to 24 hour mark. So I'm right in where I normally am. I was listening to this one lady. I forgot what YouTube channel it was, so I can't shout them out.
Is it a Resident Evil channel? Does she do a lot of horror stuff?
No. It was like,
okay. I was gonna say, is it the Spear Hunter? Because like I know I watched her videos.
No, I don't remember the channel. I'm sorry. I wish I could shout you out. I appreciate shouting people out when I get a chance. But she was saying she took 30 hours, and me, I'm like, okay, it seems like you're messing around a little too much at 30 hours.
Yeah.
That's a long playthrough of this game. But I think this is 15, 16 to 20 plus on your first playthrough, which we've talked about before. I think is a perfect length. Like I said, there were some times where I got slightly dragged down by just how much it was just go all the time. And it didn't really have some of those puzzle rooms that the original Resident Evil had. Like this, there's some like hallways and things where like you're meant to do some sort of action to progress. And in this one, pretty much every action you do to progress is just shoot shit in the face, which is awesome and it's fun. But I do slightly miss some of that more breaking up of the action that was in the original game. But that's the only real negative I got throughout everything that is the gameplay in this game.
Yeah, and again, that just goes with the fact that like this game too, and I know for a lot of people with the Resident Evil fans, it's a big thing. This game is definitely not a game you should just beat once and be done with. It's unbelievably just full of just replay ability, and replay value is so freaking high. I beat it again 2 times, and the thing is, like, you bring all your gear over, so you're constantly wanting to upgrade your weapons or get that next big thing. Like, for me, like, I want to get the infinite ammo RPG after beating it my first time through. So now my goal is, in my next playthrough, is to go through that. And then also the game does a very good job of making these shortcuts in the game that make your second playthrough a little bit more exciting too, so you can like change it up a bit, maybe cut down on certain sections so you can get through it a little bit quicker and try to speed run through the game. And it's really fun and really cool, and I love the ways they do it, and I love the fact that they really put the time in to understand like how to make a speed running experience really fun. Not saying that you have to like speedrunning to do that, but like if you want to unlock certain things in this game, you do kind of have to be sort of a speedrunner to get them and everything. And again, it's really fun. I find it very exhilarating. I find it that in your next, like, the more you play through and the more you get your gear upgraded, the more fun it is to actually do the speed runs and everything, and to have better gear so it makes things easier and more enjoyable. There are one flaw with it, and I don't really count this as a bad, but I call it a meh, and that is unlocking all the exciting things is basically all locked behind the hardest difficulty, which kind of sucks. I know Mike says that's a normal thing in a lot of the Resident Evil games, and I kind of know that, but it still kind of sucks because it's like, I don't know, it's a single player game, just let people have fun, but it is what it is. I mean, at least now they came out with Mercenaries mode, so if you do want to get the hand cannon, it isn't as hard anymore. So that kind of problem I did have is kind of swayed away because the hand cannon is pretty damn amazing, and it's really easy to unlock. Trust me, guys. It took me maybe 2 hours to unlock it, probably less than that.
Yeah,
I
it doesn't
literally
take long
went,
at all.
unlocked Hunk, and did all of them in S, and it took me one try in each go.
Well, I told you
It
to
was
because
so
Hunk
easy.
is OP as fucking
No,
mercenaries.
dude, him and Luis is actually really damn good
Oh,
too, dude. Luis's power is dumb.
I
It is
suck with Luis.
so, dude, it's
I
so easy.
suck with
Just
him.
get the TNT, put it down, shoot it. Put down another one, shoot it. Put it down another one, shoot it, and you keep making the timer go up, and it's so easy to kill everything. Obviously, Hunk is also just he is the best. Dude, that infinite ammo and the insta kill thing, dude, it's stupid. Which, by the way, I didn't know you can kill all the enemies. So, little tip for everyone, I didn't know this. You could actually kill all the enemies. I thought I had to let the timer go out. I thought it was going to be infinite. It's not. You can actually
No.
kill them all. I didn't know that until the last one I completed. I'm like, oh, you can kill everyone.
Yeah,
Well,
if you want to get
okay.
the highest score, you actually got to get that timer the high as you possibly can because you get one bonus point per second. Oh, sorry, 1,000.
Yeah.
1,000 bonus points per second that you have left on the timer. I watched
Yeah.
someone last night do the village playthrough, and he finished with like 10.5 minutes on the timer because he was just like so precise in what he was doing. And it definitely wasn't the way that I choose to play. But yes,
But yeah.
the hand cannon is the hardest gun to unlock, was the hardest game to unlock in the
Was.
game.
Yeah.
Now it's not. So everything
Yeah.
else, you just to get the Chicago
Yeah.
sweeper and to get everything, you got to beat the game on A or S on the hardest difficulties. There's
Yeah.
no
So
more.
now.
There's no more. You have to do it on new game with minimum saves and everything like that. I mean, I guess technically you still have to do it if you want to get like all the challenges locked up, done. But now you just got to beat hardcore and professional on A plus. You get the Chicago sweeper. You get the armored asher. You get everything. So I think just making that handgun or the hand cannon more accessible for me solves all the problems that I have with going for multiple playthroughs and multiple runs and upgrading everything. Which, by the way, I'm working on the hand cannon right now. I'm doing my
Yeah.
completionist
So.
run right now where I collect everything. So, all right,
Yeah, so yeah, that's great. I love that they did that. So really kind of that math problem I did have when I did write this down is kind of gone. I don't think it's really that big of a deal anymore, and that's why it was never really a bad thing anyway. So it's not something that affected my score. It was just something that was kind of like, could have been better. Um, but I mean, I guess let's do another short little segment if you want. Let's move the visuals real quick.
yeah.
And there's not going to be as much to talk about this because it's going to be pretty simple. But I want to save story for last
Here
because that'll
is
be the most exciting part for me.
here is my entire summary that I wrote down for visuals. While there are
Mhm.
nitpicks to be had, to me, it just doesn't matter. The game is gorgeous, from character models to lighting, all across the board. The game looks fantastic. The problems with the game never once took away anything I had from it. Yes, there's some shimmering on the plants, and there's a lot of nerdy stuff you can nitpick and go watch Digital Foundry to see all that. But to me, while you're playing this game, none of that matters to me. I would say the game looks absolutely phenomenal. It's gorgeous. The lighting is hugely improved over the classic RE4 experience, especially in the castle. Man, they made that castle scary as shit to walk around in. And that's really all I have to say. Like, I don't have a problem with it. Are there problems? Yes, in the technical terms, there are problems. But do I really care about that? Not me personally. As I've gotten older, I care way less about the resolution of what I'm looking at. I care more about if I'm enjoying my time while playing the game and if it looks good to my eyes while I'm playing it. And my simple short answer is yes, this game looks fantastic.
All right. Well, yeah, clearly this game is really phenomenal. It looks absolutely amazing. Environmentally, this game is just has so much detail and so much going on, and it is absolutely phenomenal looking. It is the best Resident Evil game I've ever played, looker wise. I know I judged it in the past, especially, and I will say, especially my little bit of a mishap on our a couple episodes ago when I talked about the rain. Rain does not look bad. They actually did fix that a lot. That was one of my biggest problems when they first showcased the game, because it did look really bad then. But it does look way better now, and especially when it is raining now, it actually looks insanely good. I think the lighting is phenomenal. I think the environments and the way they redesigned everything looks so damn good. I think the enemies look really scary now with so much detail going on. I love the way that they implemented the Las Plagas to be a lot more visible. So like when you blow enemies in half, you'll see Las Plagas like coming out of their chest and everything. It's freaking awesome. The gore, the details, everything, dude. It's high up there. Now, that's just not to say that there isn't any problems with it, and there are problems, and it's some of them are very much not big deals. For one, I think one that's not a big deal, it does kind of suck, but it's something to do with the fact that this game is checkerboard rendering, and something to do with the fact that, so for example, and I did play both versions. On the Xbox version, there is almost no aliasing going on. With hair, etc., it looks pristine, it looks super clean. But for some reason on PS5, the hair does look pretty alias. It's not like god awful, but it is there and it sometimes looks a little ugly. And it's mainly because of a problem with the checkerboard rendering. Because both Xbox and PlayStation are actually the exact same resolution, everything's the exact same. It's just something to do with the checkerboard rendering, which kind of sucks. Also, a little tip for everyone: turn off chromatic aberration immediately because that shit makes it look really does not make the game look good. It just trust me, turn it off. You're gonna thank me later. Um, but there are some bads, and I want to throw them in there real quick because they are bonus things that they add on. But for the people that like visuals, just let me throw this in there. Ray tracing is a joke in this game for the first part. It actually makes things look worse. And this is a part of the bad for me. So it doesn't like do a lot for me when it comes to my score, but it is just bad, and it's just a useless feature in the game because it, especially in the water, it looks awful. It does not even reflect most of the time. It just doesn't look good, and all it does is tank your performance. Two is hair strand feature, the thing that should have been fixed on day one. On PC, it's working perfectly fine, but for console, hair strands aren't working correctly because the lighting on them isn't right. And I'm just talking about what I played, guys. I don't know if they fixed it by now, but this is my review of when I played it at launch. So sorry. But hair strands are completely broken, and it actually looks worse than the hair that they already baked in. And it sucks because I actually seen some PC gameplay of the hair strands, and it actually looks really, really good. But on console, it looks horrible. Again, I don't know what they did, but the lighting, they just something wasn't right about it. It's bad. Also another thing is they have two different modes for this game where they have a performance and a resolution mode. And the issue with those two is the fact that they're both uncapped. So if you choose resolution, you're getting like 40 FPS. And this isn't bad, this is just dumb. But performance is, in my opinion, by the way to play this game. Just play performance with nothing else on. Turn off chromatic aberration. Boom. That's the best way to do this game. Other than that, visually, frame rate wise, this game's flawless. Perfect. I had no problems, no super huge frame drops, nothing else. Just those visual features were garbage. They suck. It seems to be a problem mainly on console. I didn't play on Xbox, but if I was reviewing on Xbox, I would probably take even more points down for the fact that the controls are god awful and I think still are not fixed. But since I didn't, I'm not going to review that. But I will say that the Xbox version, I'm sorry, because goddamn, those controls suck. But other than that, I think this game is super visually impressive. I hope they do fix those minor aliasing problems with the hair because it can be fixed. It is fixed on Xbox. Please fix it on PlayStation. Much appreciated. And if you really want to do it, maybe fix those hair strands because the hair strands would be pretty cool. You know, it makes the game look like it's those CGI movies that everyone loves. So you know, it'd be cool. So other than that, I think that's going to really end my visuals. I think this game is beautiful, phenomenal. I think all the environments are insanely well done. I really want to give a shout out to those artists They did a damn fine job of this game. Every environment feels completely different, very exciting to explore and look at. Uh, yeah, it's phenomenal. And also, by the way, the character design, it's damn good in this game. So I think that's gonna end my visual area of this review. So
All
unless
right.
you have something else to say, Mike.
No, like I said, I've stopped delving super deep into it. Like, I'm pretty much just gonna tell people if I think the game looks good or it looks bad. Like, a good example is God of War Ragnarok looks good. Saints Row looks bad. There's my
Yes.
critical consensus of those. Let's just run through sound design real quick, and that's another short one for me, and get to the big one, which is the story changes and level design things that I want to talk about that are different, and how I think they're good or bad depending on those things. Again, sound design, fantastic. The guns, all of them. I haven't shot a single gun where I thought, yeah, that sounds bad. I think every single gun you shoot is punchy, it's weighty, you feel that shot, and I think it's essentially again flawless. I have heard some complaints out there that says the spatial audio in a way seems jacked up in a way, like you can hear enemies from like houses away, and in my perspective, I'm like, well, yeah, if there's no other noises going around, you're gonna hear an enemy chanting violently a couple houses away. Like, you
Mm-hmm.
think if the world's really quiet in your apartment and someone's talking upstairs, probably gonna hear them. So I don't have that complaint, but I guess there is that complaint out there that the spatial audio and sound mixing seems a little off. Um, and I will say the updated music, while I think I still prefer the older soundtrack, this is definitely updated to make more sense with this remake's much darker tone, just in general, story wise, visual wise, everything. This is a much more darker, mature game, and I think what they've done with the score and the soundtrack reflects that fairly well. I will say I prefer the OG typewriter song to this one. I don't think it hits as well, but again, overall, again, we're talking about 10 out of 10s across the board for me here. So there are said slight nitpicks, and I do prefer the original score a little more, especially in some of the more widely used songs. But I think they had to change it to, like I said, fit this game's much changed tone. So what do you got? Oh, Mike, sorry, voice
Go on.
acting all top notch except for one character who I think doesn't do a great job at voice acting. I don't think it's as bad as the internet does, but it's not the best performance. It's definitely, clearly the weakest out of everyone else, who I think does a fantastic job with the voices in this game. So, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with most of those points, so I'm not going to reiterate most of it. But I will say I was going to go for voice acting, and I do think Ada by far is the worst out of all of them. And I don't really think any of them are bad. It's just her voice acting. I played through it again multiple times. First playthrough, it really did catch me off guard when she was talking because I'm like, it felt so off compared to literally everyone else in the game. Um, and I didn't go back and listen to RE2 version of her, so I don't even know if it's the same woman. I don't think it is. But uh, she just she's just I honestly, that's probably the one big negative for me of the audio. It's just I don't think she did a really good job, and it probably wasn't even her fault. From what I could tell, it's the director's fault. And I just don't think her voice acting work is or in the game is just not good. It's not. The good part though is she's not really in this game that much. It's really not that big of a deal, but I will admit hers is probably the weakest out of the bunch. The only other time I noticed some very weak voice acting was the very beginning of the game that I talked about, where again you don't really see these characters that much, but it's the two police officers driving you to the village for the first time. I find their voice acting to be also extremely bad as well. Again, probably maybe the director. I don't know. Other than that, And they're probably those two are probably the best, the worst case scenarios of the entire game. I think everyone else does a phenomenal job. I think everyone else is insanely well done. It seems like they really got into their characters and really just put all their everything forward in it. I think one of my favorite characters in the game was definitely Krauser. We'll be getting into that in story wise, but I think honestly, it's probably my favorite part of the game is him. I think it was really awesome. I think he does an insanely good job, and I also just will be getting into the story. So yeah, I think his part of the story is probably the most interesting. So
Yeah, like I said, I don't think Ada's bad. I don't think she's good. To use a modern term, I would call her very mid. It's she just very much seems like she doesn't care, which I
yeah,
guess
she just kind of like
is
Leon.
it's very in line with it's very in line with Ada's characterization throughout the series. Her voice actresses have always just been a little bit more dynamic than she is in this one. Now you said she's not in the game a lot. She's in the game a lot more in this one than the original game, I will tell you that.
That's fair.
And there is a just Marvel-esque scene at the end of it that is, and I think is so cool. I love Ada just because I have all the history of her. But yeah, I will say, she's very monotone in this. She doesn't seem very excited. Um, and that is, I guess, technically in line. But again, I don't think she's bad. Quick shout out. This is real world talk. If you guys are listening to this and you're one of them that have violently harassed her on social media, please leave. Like, I don't want you in my community or in our community. We don't do that here. That's not what human beings are supposed to do. So if you don't like something, you can criticize, but don't harass and threaten. So, all right,
Yeah, I don't.
out of the way.
Yeah, that was. I just. Yeah, real quick thing. Just why? Just. It's not that big of a deal, guys. It's just. She wasn't right for the character, and that's the end of the story. So, yeah. So, all right. Are you ready to move on to story?
Oh, I am 100% ready. And I want to make one general statement before we dive
Mm-hmm.
into all the nitty gritty. I like the story of Resident Evil 4. OG, classic. I've always thought
Mm-hmm.
it was fun, it was entertaining, the characters were goofy and silly. I've always thought it was a good story. The
Mm-hmm.
remake makes this a great story with
Yeah.
fantastic character development and little itty bitty changes in the way that characters react and talk to each other that I think takes this to the next level. I'm not saying it's amazing, like it's not on the same level as your favorite game, Red Dead, my favorite game, or questionably favorite game now, God of War. It doesn't have that just complete and utter detailed of like perfect characters, or another shout out, The Last of Us. The list goes on of like these absolutely fantastically told stories. I don't think it joins that margin of the gaming industry, but this is a ridiculously good story, well told, with deep character motivations, and it's a huge improvement, probably the biggest improvement that I have over the original. And like I said, something that I already enjoyed, I didn't realize I was going to get this much extra and this many changes and little nuanced character moments in this remake. And I can just say wholeheartedly, I was thrilled with what they did with the story here, and they made it a great to fantastic story in my eyes.
Yeah, I think to summarize it for me, I think this is a very, very good B movie style story. And that is not a negative. That is actually a very big positive because I think each kind of type of story has its own place. There could be great action movies, there could be great drama movies, there could be great horror movies, there could be all that, and none of them are all in the same boat. And I think this game's B movie style story is phenomenal. I think they do an insanely great job of keeping it in that kind of theme. Um, I do like. I haven't played the classic, but I know that the classic was a little bit more wacky than this one was. But I do still love the fact that they do still keep some of that wackiness in there, some of that very funny and cheesy lines that Leon will throw out at times. The just I don't know, it's really fun, it's exciting, it's it's very, again, as we've said before, it's just so well, like, it's just all perfect, you know, like it just it doesn't feel like they are taking too long at each moment. Everything just it's a constant, like as Mike said, you just go and boom, and it just keeps going and keeps going until the very end, and it never feels like everything's slowed down to a crawl. It just was action packed from the very beginning to the very end. And yeah, I love that. It just, story wise, I think it's literally the perfect mix. I know maybe you didn't get as much puzzles and stuff, but I do think that this game is very well done on mixing both its action and its horror so well that I don't think I've ever played a game like it before, where literally at times it got really scary. Especially, I think the most scary section of the game for me was the island and a certain enemy type called the Regenerator. And oh my god,
I mean,
that section terrified me.
that's the
It was
I
go
was
on.
just say that's the scariest part in the original one, and I told you
Yeah.
they're fucking
Yeah.
creepy, man.
It
They
was
are horrifying.
terrifying. And it was just awesome. I feel like there's also a bunch of other moments, like what's his name?
It's the way they
I have all
move.
of them written down. It's
Like,
the
dude,
not Krauser. It's Vertigo. Um, that boss fight was terrifying. Again, it's just this fun adventure of a game because like not Krauser. I keep thinking Vertigo. It reminds me a lot of the alien from Aliens, or Alien, I guess. And it was so terrifying, that section too. Again, and that was in the castle section. So there's always constantly this like action, but then also those horror moments that really get you. There's a few moments in mind. I mean, one of them that's really small was when you go into the chief's house and you do a puzzle and you leave the room, and then all of a sudden this person that you literally just killed in the bathroom just comes out and makes the most terrifying sound around the corner. And it for the first time when I first played it, I jumped. I like paused the game and I'm like, I gotta take a minute. I gotta take a minute. That really got me. That was fucking good. You got me. I didn't expect it for some reason. Um, and it's just like it's so good. Like, you know, like it's and I love it. And I found this a lot more enjoyable than Resident Evil 2 was. And it's nothing against Resident Evil 2. I understand why it is the way it is. It's very close to what the original was, but I like this a lot more because again, it's more action packed. I'm a very action oriented person. I love action games. I don't like when things are too slow. Maybe it's my ADHD. I don't like when things are going too slow, and I think this game does a phenomenal job of not being boring, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's just so much fun. It's fun. It's a fun video game story.
yeah.
And it still has that reminiscence of a 2005 story with it. It's not as modernized as what we see today, but it's so refreshing and exciting and just, I guess, different than what we get nowadays. You know, it's phenomenal. It's great. It's a good time, and I have looked up some of the differences, and I really appreciate the differences that they did in this game with like specifically Luis and Krauser, especially Krauser. I looked up a lot about like how he was in the original, and I really love the changes, and it makes me appreciate it even more how well they've changed Krauser in this game. They made him a lot more interesting with the fact that he was the one that trained Leon. And also, he is basically in this game, basically the copy of Leon, but on the opposite side. Like, he is the uh, like almost like the clone of Leon, but he's the opposite of Leon. You know, like he chose like the dark side while Leon chose the light side kind of thing. And it's so B movie, but it's so good. It's so interesting. And this like when you find, and I know I'm jumping way ahead of the story. I don't care. We're gonna jump around. Um when you get to that last Krauser fight and you're basically like going through all the training that you did with him, it kind of reminded me of like Darth Vader and Luke kind of shit. It
I
was
was gonna
just
say, yeah.
so
Well, I was gonna say
good. Like
like he's the Vader to Leon's Ahsoka. Like
Yeah.
he's that guy that went bad, and it really hurts Ahsoka and Leon in this. And it's like, why are you doing this? You would never like this. I mean, he was always not a
Hmm.
great, like if you watch the movie and you play the game, he's not a great guy ever, but he always cared about the
Like honor and
yeah,
code.
yeah. And
Yeah.
he's doing this again. They've given every single character here a motivation. They've matured every
Hmm.
character, and they've given him motivation. I was actually going to go through character to character and talk about some of the changes and all that. But if you want to go with Krauser and Leon's relationship, we'll start there. I don't really care where we start, but
Yeah, I was
yes,
just gonna kind of jump around. I
no,
wasn't
you're
gonna
good.
try going in order. I was like, screw it. I just want to get to what, in my opinion, was very exciting. I really, really liked it a lot. Again, it's one of my favorite sections in the game. It's even more exciting than the last part of the last fight in the game. I just find it so just cool. It's badass. I wanted to learn more about Krauser after that. I wanted to know more. I just wanted to see more. I was like, this is actually really good. It was fun. Again, it's a very B movie plot and a very B movie thing to do, but it's so good and it's great. I don't know, it's just a fun little like side story to this bigger plot that's going on.
Well, I mean, I think this, especially the Krauser story and Leon's relationship, I think it moves out of a little bit of the B movie kind of story you're talking about, especially with the end of Krauser and the way the scene is shot. You know, Leon picks up the knife, he looks at the knife, and he sees his own reflection in it. And like you were talking about, that's a perfect mirror because Leon was trained by Krauser, and Krauser is a mirror of Leon. And when he picks up the
Hmm.
knife and he looks at his face, and then he goes to deal the final blow, and he struggles with it. Like he sits there with the knife, and he doesn't want to do it because this is somebody in Krauser who has meant so much to Leon and is essentially almost solely responsible for making him who he is. And while it's not realistic in any retrograde or anything, he's in this franchise, he's a guy that the president can just send in by himself and like go, you know, save my daughter. You definitely don't need any backup. Like go in
Yeah.
by yourself, which is always a funny thing to talk about RE4. Like, this was real world, they go in with a strike team or something, but no, there's like, nope, Leon, you got this. But,
And I also go on.
I was just gonna say,
You
like
have a-
he struggles with it, and then when he deals that final blow and he assumes the mantle of the master, Krauser's proud. Like
Mhm.
he looks up to Leon and he says, pretty much in summation, like, you did good, man. Congratulations. And it's
And
like,
they
oh, I kind of felt something. Like you were talking about this is, B movie and all that, and it definitely is. I've always tried to look at things in what they try to be and not what I wanted them to be. This game is not trying to make you cry. This isn't trying to make you weep in tears like The Last of Us or other thing like that. This game and the story is trying to flip flop back and forth between making you stressed as hell and then giving you this fist pumping action and heart racing action set pieces and make you just go, hell yes, that was awesome. When the chopper flies in, we'll get to that. All these things.
Mhm.
It's trying to get a perfect balance of stressing you the hell out and then giving you these just incredible moments. And like you said, I think it doesn't even balance that. It achieves it flawlessly. And I think Krauser is one of the few points in this remake story where it brings Leon's story complete for the first time in Resident Evil. We've always got those snippets and everything, like I said, like you get the Krauser and Leon story a couple years after the original RE4 came out. And in this game, it uses that to its advantage and brings it all into this singular story. And my hat's just off to him. Like I was sad killing Krauser, which I never had been sad. I always just punched him in the face with a rocket launcher in the original game. I never cared. And I cared deeply. And that whole scene, that whole final scene where he takes him out is emotionally resonant for me. Deeply.
Yeah, and I just love that the overall story of this game too. Like, yeah, you can look at it one way that, it's Leon going to save the president's daughter. That's the plot, But it's also that every single character that you meet throughout this game has something that they've done wrong in their past or tried to fix. You got Luis, you got Leon, you got Krauser, Like they're all trying to fix something that they've done from their past, and it's just, I don't know, the way that they resolve everything is just so interesting and phenomenal, especially with Krauser again and Leon. Like the fact that Krauser and Leon are one of the same, but they chose two different paths, and it's all due to their past, on the fact that they both had two different um, ways of moving forward or trying to better themselves. One chose the easy way out, while the other one chose the harder way. And again, it's just like those little details in the story that just make things so interesting. Again, such a basic story of like this one man badass fighting machine has to go save the president's daughter from these crazy infected cultists, and what you're getting is just such a more fascinating tale of Leon finally finding himself and figuring himself out and noticing that he can actually save people. He can actually fight back. And that's how the whole Krauser fight ends. He learns that he can overcome.
And it's
And,
also
and
worth
I,
noting that Krauser's not here for Sadler or Salazar. He's here for himself. He's here to
yeah, he's
take
for power.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
here to take revenge on the people who have wronged him. That you get that story in that movie, and they don't dive into it too heavily here, but you get the gist of somebody betrayed him, and that somebody is the U.S. government. And he's here solely for revenge. He's not here to help Sadler and everything like that in his endeavor. Well, okay, back up. He is,
Well,
but
he's not just there for revenge. He's also there for just for himself
yeah, he's there
to
because he feels
be
like
stronger.
he, you know, he picked. He's picking the winner. He's trying to.
Yeah.
He's trying to come out on top and get his revenge on the U.S. government. All right. Krauser is fantastic.
Yeah.
Next increase. I want to go to the two biggest characters that have seen massive overhauls.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with one of your favorites and then we'll go to the other one. Luis.
Yeah.
Luis has seen a massive change from the first game. From the original game. And in this game, you get to play with him, which you never did in the original. He's alongside with you for a couple hours in the game, actually, depending on how long your playthrough is. And throughout those couple hours, you learn just how sorry he is about his role in all this, and he regrets deeply his role in the Illuminados and the production of the Las Plagas virus. And he's doing everything that he knows and he can to solve that and come to terms with it. And it says, you never got that. In the original, Luis would show up every once in a while and he was a doofus. He forgot the freaking cure. And he was like, oh, shit. I dropped it somewhere. It's like, all right, well, thanks for nothing, man. Like, he was cool and, like, he was, like, this soiree guy. He felt like kind of like, a lesser James Bond in a way. Just definitely not as cool. But in this game, he has a huge point in the story, and he helps Leon in the same way. But we've been talking about, or I've been talking about, everything is just so much more in this game. His character gets so much more room to breathe and depth and understanding, and you really feel like again, massive spoiler. We've been spoiling this the whole time. But if he were to make it out of this, which he unfortunately does not make it out of this game in this scenario, him and Leon could easily go on to become friends and to become, people who can rely on each other. And you get to see that essentially right as he ends up getting taken out, which again, his death is different. I've talked to you about that, so we can tell that, which again, I guess links very well with Krauser, since Krauser is the one to take Luis out, which he was not the one to take him out in the original game.
Which again,
I think it emphasizes
the
importance of Krauser, yeah.
Yeah, and further push for the player to want to take Krauser out after you're literally just kind of bonding with Luis to just get that taken away immediately by Krauser. Which, by the way, that fucking knife fight was badass. Let's throw that in there real quick. Very fucking cool. Again, further flexing those Resident Evil design muscles of adding that parry system. God damn. Maybe Callisto Protocol should be taking some notes, dude, because fucking goddamn.
You want to know what's
Um,
funny?
mhm.
You're talking about how much you love all this, and which is great. I love that you loved it. Um, but something that I realized while playing this more than I ever realized before, this is essentially Capcom's Metal Gear Solid. With the
Really?
way with the way these characters are done, the way these stories are told, and the way these scenes are told and scripted and all these thing and all this thing, this is Hideo Kojima's Resident Evil. And I know you
Really?
say you never like Metal Gear Solid, but these are the things that people love about Metal Gear Solid. Just like this cool shit that, just comes out of nowhere. And that boss fight with Krauser, which is just a knife fight out of nowhere. You just start fighting with your
Mhm.
knives, and you can pull out your gun if you want. But that is so Metal Gear Solid, and I guess it never hit me until I'm playing this. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm playing MGS4 again, with this
No.
just two dudes just fighting with knives out of nowhere, and that's the reason why I love. So small thing, maybe give him a shot. Don't know, you probably never will,
Yeah.
but that is what I came. Whoa,
Come.
what I've come to
Yeah.
understand about where this game sits in my personal pantheon. That's why I love those two. That's why they're both on my list. So, oh, you were saying, sorry.
I don't think there is much more I had to say other than I mean I just said yeah, like the knife fight was really badass. But yeah, I think Luis really grows as a character throughout the game where again, the first time you meet him, it's kind of the same way in the original from what I could tell. Obviously things go down a little bit more differently. But I think you from the beginning where like he's very untrustworthy and he kind of leaves you alone in that moment, and then you figuring out that he is worked for Umbrella, and obviously from Leon's perspective, from again playing Resident Evil 2, you'll know that obviously Leon has it out for Umbrella because of the stuff that happened in Raccoon City, and all the cover-ups and everything. So him growing as a character and him kind of like literally the more and more you learn that he's like trying to be honest that like he actually does feel bad for his mistakes in the past and he wants to fix it. He wants to help Leon save the president's daughter, and he wants to make things right. And they just do a phenomenal job of doing it. And like especially that boss fight you do in the middle with the two I don't even know their names, the Gigantors or whatever, the two of me at the fight in the lava pit. It's really badass, it's really cool. You really end up becoming a team, and it's so perfect because shortly after that, as we said, finally after all that bonding experience of you guys working together, Krauser kills him, and then that sparks again my more enjoyment about the fact that you as a player, you the player, now feel this huge urge that like, dude, this motherfucker just took this guy that was really cool. Like this character was building on me, and like I was really starting to like him. And then just to get him killed right in front of me, I'm like, I want to kill this dude. I really want to take him out now. You
Question:
know?
did you know
Yeah.
that Luis dies before you played it, or did it
No,
take you by complete surprise?
it did take me by surprise. And then I
Okay.
looked up how he died in the original game, and that was even more surprising. And I much prefer, by the way, how he dies in this game way more than he did in the original.
Yeah.
So, especially the fact that Ashley actually seems to care in this game compared to what I seen in the original.
Well, perfect
Where
segue
Ashley,
because that's what I want to talk about next.
yes,
I think the
yeah,
character that has honestly changed the most, because these other characters haven't necessarily changed, they've just been detailed out, and
hmm
you understand them a lot more. Ashley has completely changed. You know, I've never been an Ashley complete hater like a lot of OG Resident Evil fans. She is annoying,
hmm
and she has this whiny ass voice in the original. And
Leon,
Leon!
Leon.
And in this game, like they've done with essentially everything, I keep coming back to the same word in my head. The same word that I think almost perfectly summarizes this entire game is it's just more mature.
hmm
It's just a more mature story with mature characters and mature themes and motivations. And Ashley's character has been, I think, the biggest change out of all of them. And especially, like you said, she cares. She's scared and she's like, she doesn't know how to deal with it. There's one scene that I loved, and it's when it's when Leon finds her for the second time after uh she escapes him, and you go to the maze section, and you find her in that
Hmm.
room, and she's just sitting there, and she's terrified of who she is and what she's done, because it's not even really her in control anymore for most of the time, and the two have this really, well, not really deep, but fairly deep communication. And Leon's like, look, I'm scared too, but we have to keep going. And what I wrote down here is like, she seems just more like a fully fleshed out character that struggles with the reality of the situation that she's in, but she ends up eventually overcoming that and learns to soldier on and follows Leon throughout of all of it, and they trust each other unanimously by the time you get to the end of the game. And
Hmm.
yes, we can talk about how there's not all the sexual stuff with Ashley's character and that anymore, which, obviously plays very well in 2023. Um, but she just seems like just a more mature character, which is good because she's supposed to be. It was always really creepy because she felt like a
Hmm.
fucking 15-year-old in the first game. In this game, she
Hmm.
feels like a mid-20s college girl because that's who she is. That's her age. That's what she's supposed to be, and she feels like
Hmm.
that. And throughout the whole course of the game, she feels like she matures in appropriate ways in what I guess a normal person would, dealing with this situation and the situation that both of these are in. She continually feels like by the time you get to the end, yeah, you would be so relieved and you would want this guy to be around you at all the time. Not exactly in a sexual manner. There is some of that old school kind of Resident Evil sexual tension in there, but it's more
Hmm.
coming from a place of he saved her and he helped her get through this, so she feels like she would want him around for all for any amount of time that she can. So that final line of where it used to be like, why don't we, come back to my place, we
Yeah,
put
while
it
we do some
yeah, we
overtime.
put in some
Yeah,
overtime,
yeah,
which was
yeah.
always, it was tongue in cheek and funny, but in this one there's still that same undertone, but it's just done again in a much more mature manner. And it's like, hey, well, I can talk to my dad, and you can be on my protective unit because, like, I want you around. Again, there may be that, that attraction between, well, maybe her and Leon. I don't think Leon reciprocates that in any way because
No, like every
he's
time she's like, "Oh, you would look really good in that night suit," and he's like, "Yeah."
cool,
He just keeps going, "Cool,
because
cool."
Leon's locked in love with Ada. Eventually, they're gonna
Yeah.
get together. But anyway, outside of the, the sexual jokes and all that, it's just simply more mature. I don't want to say it 18 million times, but that's what this game is. And I think what they managed to accomplish with Ashley's character, it's still an escort mission. And, anyone who's played any sort of Assassin's Creed games, they hate escort missions. And while they're still kind of annoying sometimes, when she gets hit, you're like, oh, fuck. Okay, now I got to run back and press the fucking R3 button to pick her up.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near as bad as it is in this one, in the original one. And there's multiple times I learned that she can actually help you achieve things. Like in the final section, when you run into the one of the last regenerators, and she's like holding that bridge open. If you run,
Yes, yeah, I did that. Yep, I
okay,
went
yeah,
through that. Yep.
if you
Yep.
run back, she'll drop the regenerator, and she'll be like, "How do you like this?" Like, in that is a part of her growth throughout the game. She's becoming more confident in who she is and all that. Yeah, she's not a soldier. She's not going to pick up a gun and start blasting away. That's not who she is. That's not who she's ever going to be. But you see a continual growth throughout her. And when you get to the end of the game, she is a wholly new and stronger character because of what she's gone through. And that's just human reality. Like when we go through hard times and we go through these certain things in our life, we always hope to come out of the other end better and more improved. And I think they've managed to do that here. And again, I can just take my hat off and give them a round of applause because they managed to take what is innately a very annoying character and make her a real human.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to say because I feel like I'm just going to be copying a lot of what you've already said. But I will say, yeah, I think from my perspective of just playing this and not playing the original, um, I do think her character does grow quite a bit throughout the story. She definitely does become a lot more confident. She becomes a lot more helpful. Um, And yeah, I mean, I don't really know much more to say about that other than she actually wasn't a bad character. Yeah, sometimes again, as you said, it gets a little annoying with her. Sometimes she likes to get in front of your gun when you're trying to shoot people, and it's pretty funny, but also annoying at the same time. But it's never like too bad to where again it was ever a problem for me. And honestly, her sections were really not that bad for me. Now, at the beginning, when I first started with her, it took me a little bit of a learning curve. She got captured a few times. I struggled a little bit. Not like fully captured, but more someone grabbed her and I had to rush through a bunch of enemies to save her. Um, but I do find her to not really be that annoying, and I felt like her character was pretty good, you know? I mean, was she my favorite character out of all of them? No, but I do think her character was more interesting than what I could tell from the previous game or the previous version of this game. And yeah, she just kind of grows on you, and she seems again that further show of her confidence is when she gets on that wrecking ball and has to destroy the wall and everything. And then also some of the funny jokes she throws between you, like when you jump between a chandelier and you come back, and she's like, "Don't do that again, Leon." He's like, "What? Are you my mother?" You know, like
Yeah,
it's so good. Like they do some jokes back and forth. Clearly, there's some flirting going on. Like there's one where about the knight armor. There's one where they're sitting at a table to do a puzzle, and she'll like throw out some like flirty jokes with him. But it's again, as you said, and you might as well put a counter on this by now. She's just a far more mature character from what I could tell. Didn't play the original, so I'm not gonna say anything. But I'm just saying, I thought from this original perspective, I thought she was a pretty dang good character. Yeah.
yeah. And with those cheesy lines, like that's one thing that I love. It's still Resident Evil 4. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
still the same game. It's just I'm not gonna say it. It's the M word more. All right.
Yeah, it's the M word.
We've talked about one of the main antagonists. Let's go ahead and dive into the other two main antagonists. And this is where really my only negative comes and kind of my only meh that I have. Well, I guess my only
Yeah.
negative with the characters. Salazar, the main antagonist of the castle section. I'll just read you kind of what I wrote here and then we'll dive into it. I say, while Salazar has seen a fleshed out backstory through the files and everything that you pick up throughout the game, I feel like I overall enjoyed his character more in the original than in the remake. In the original, he felt more antagonistic and he felt generally just annoying and less worried about, just simply trying to kill Leon or capture him. He felt like he wanted to play with him a little bit more and I like that. I like that slightly more in the original. He had this childish demeanor to him in the original one, and I just felt like it played a little bit more. He was the oddball out from the other two main antagonists, being um, Sadler and Krauser. He was kind of this, he just wanted to like make his master happy in a way, and I think you're missing that here. I think we're missing a little bit of why I liked Salazar and why it was so cool to finally just shut him up when you get to that ending boss fight. And I think his mature take here is actually a little bit to his detriment. Now, do I think he's a bad character? No, I honestly don't think we get any bad characters in this entire game. But I do overall enjoy his whiny kind of jokiness in the original game because he was more just annoying and he was a nuance to Leon. And Leon's like, I'm done with you, man. And you still get that at the end, but like it just doesn't really ring as much or as true as I thought it would have been if he was a more childish character than he is in the original game. What do you think overall?
Yeah. Again, I'm just gonna go off of this perspective. I can't really compare him much to the original. I didn't watch much about him. I thought he was a really good character. I thought he definitely was really annoying, but I think that's what plays so well into the fact that at the very end, when you finally catch up with him after him constantly being like sending his goons is what I'm gonna call him on you, or I'm gonna call him his cultist goons, at him. You finally catch up with him, and that satisfying, just absolutely hilarious, where he keeps monologuing. He's like, "Dude, just shut up," and then shoots him 2 times in the chest. He's like, "How dare you!" and then shoots him right in the head, and he falls down. I'm like, okay, that was That was pretty satisfying. Like that was funny.
Which is
So for me, from this original perspective, I thought he was a really good character. I thought he was a funny little antagonist. I from his design, he definitely seems definitely a bit different in design, like by a lot. But I really like his new design because he definitely looks more like he is infected by the Lost Plagas, and his like weird, gross ass head and everything. It just looks so much more gross and realistic. And yeah, I mean, I I loved it. Though there is a negative, and I think
okay.
me and Mike both agree to this. It's the boss fight with him. He is probably the only boss fight in this entire game that I truly was just like. So here's the thing. As I said, this game is difficult. It's challenging, and especially some of these boss fights are really challenging and can be really difficult. But for me, person that especially has played Elden Ring, by the way, challenge has to be fair. And when it's not fair, then the challenge is just annoying. It's just boring and it's just hard for hard's sake, and there's no learning curve. There's no learning process. You're not learning anything from your mistakes. Every other boss fight, when I died, I understood what I was doing wrong. I understood maybe I was being too aggressive. Maybe I need to back off a little bit. Oh, hey, here's one of their weak spots that I can do anything. Oh, I have a flash grenade. Let me throw it there. That'll help me out. This guy has none of that. He is try to stay by this concrete pillar as long as possible and just try to hopefully dodge his attacks. That's the learning curve for this guy. And it's honestly just like a boring, in my opinion, I think it's a pretty boring boss fight because he is so unpredictable, and the fact that there's no cue on what kind of attack he's going to do to you. I'm not saying it has to be super obvious, but there's nothing, not even a slight little thing to like understand his move set, to understand when he's going to do this thing or that thing. There's no like huge difference on each what I'm going to call it tier of his health. Like when you do the first stab, like he does slightly different things, but it's always like super unpredictable, and it's kind of frustrating. So in the end, it kind of makes you as a player just kind of want to stick by this concrete pillar and just keep running around in circles until he does his attack. And it's just boring. It's not a fun boss fight. And it honestly is the only boss fight in this entire game that I'm like, man, I don't like this boss fight. I'm actually actively annoyed and also actively bored because it goes on for so long for the first thing, because it takes so many bullets to kill him. Unless, by the way, we did learn if you have 2 gold eggs, you can kill him. Which, by the way, that's kind of makes me a little bit more mad. But also, like, I played it again 2 times, and both times I played through this game, it's still the worst section in the game, from in my opinion. It's the one part of the game that I like actively do not like because his boss fight is just awful. It's awful. So, what about you, Mike?
I mean, yeah, we talked about it. I just think it's bad.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about mechanically, you know, compare this to the Krauser fight where when Krauser does a attack, it's not, you know, this huge, long, drone, whatever animation. It is a quick animation that you can
Hmm.
recognize, and that gives you a very small window to recognize the attack and dodge it. And the more you practice at it, the better you'll get. That's the key trademark of a good boss fight. All of them have it. The Big Cheese, you know, the Chief
Hmm.
has his tells. Um, Sadler has his tells. Krauser has his tells. And like
The
you were talking about,
Gyarados,
yeah, like
the giant dudes, every one of them have something for you to learn
yeah,
from if you make a mistake. This is the only boss fight in the game that truly there's just no learning
yeah.
process.
It's
You
not
just
even.
gotta hopefully not get hit by his attacks.
It's
Hopefully.
yeah. It's not even trial and error. It's just get lucky.
Yeah.
And like you said, it is the longest boss fight. He has the biggest health pool. He has the most unpredictable attacks in the entire game, and it is simply just the only misstep in what is essentially a flawless game, a masterpiece in my eyes. And it's the only misstep. And it's funny when I got to that section, and we popped him in the head a couple times, and he fell. I was like, oh, are they just gonna skip it? Like, are they just because everyone doesn't like the boss fight in the original one? Is there kind of gotcha? Is just you just pop it in the head, this annoying little twat of a character, just done. And no,
Mhm.
then he comes back. I think his design, he looks really awesome. He
Yeah,
looks
he
super
does look
cool.
really cool.
But yeah, it's just overall, it's just
It's
a
also, I think, another thing they could have fixed is the fact that the arena that you were fighting him in, there's literally only one thing of cover. So clearly, as a player, most players, what are they going to probably stick next to?
that one thing
That
of cover.
one pillar that literally is the only thing keeping you from getting hit by him. There is no way to actively dodge his attacks unless you're next to the pillar.
Yeah.
So basically, it makes you wanting to explore the arena useless. And again, that's a huge negative to the fight. Every other fight you want to explore. You want to climb that ladder to get to high ground. You want to do this. Maybe you in the giant fight, you want to go into the shack and try to think. Again, it's making you use the arena during the fight. This one, you basically just want to stay next to that pillar because if you leave that pillar, you are definitely not going to dodge his attacks. There's
And
no way to dodge him.
and
There just isn't.
don't even get me started on his stupid fucking mines he placed anywhere. If I had a
Yeah.
count of how many times I ran into the mines because my camera was looking at him, because you have to look at him if you have any chance at all to identify the 1 millisecond of window you have to figure out what attack he's going to do, and if it's the one where you can actually take advantage of or not.
Mhm.
I'm looking at him and then I just run into a mine. I'm like, cool, great, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, his fight sucked. I don't think
It
it's like
still sucks even
I,
through multiple playthroughs. I'll tell
I
you
don't
that. And
I
so,
don't think it's atrocious. I've played way worse boss fights. I just think it's mechanically flawed. It's the only part of the
yeah.
game that is mechanically
And
flawed.
again, it's literally the only boss fight, by the way, guys, in the game. Even Vertigo, which by the way has an excessive amount of health, you could still learn how to completely just dodge him and not even fight him. And again, it's a learning process. So it's just like he's literally the only one, the only boss fight in the game, and it's not enough to be like, again, it's not a huge negative. It's just more like he's just that one, as people would say, stinker
Yeah,
in the whole story.
like I said,
So,
he's
yeah.
the only misstep in the game in my eyes. So
Mhm.
all right, two more characters to talk about. The
All right.
final villain, the main antagonist of the entire game, Mr. Sadler, whose name I literally just forgot his first name. Ramon Sadler. Nope, that's Salazar. I don't know.
I think it's just Sadler. I think so.
He has a first name. I just don't remember it. Anyway, okay, this is my only meh. I've had, what, 2 or 3 negatives, and again, the nitpicky, and the rest of it has been positive. This is my only meh. I said here, while the updated Sadler has clearly a much more intimidating presence in the remake, when he shows up, shit goes down, and
Mhm.
he's scary, his screen time has been dramatically diminished. You don't meet him. I said here to the back half, but as I did a little bit more research as I wrote it, you don't even meet him till like the last 2 or 3 hours of the game. You see him in the opening cutscene, and you hear him talking throughout the game, but you don't ever come face to face with him until you get into the Amber Room, where you find the source of the contagion.
Let's plug us.
Yeah, and which, by the way, completely new for the remake. Wasn't in
Really?
there. You never knew the source of the plagas. You could read about it, but you never like had a room where you could see the actual creatures like
Hmm.
in the amber. So that's also completely new, which again just gives more detailed and backstory to this game, which I think just makes it a complete story. But yeah, you first meet Sadler in the church when you meet up with Ashley for the first time. That's when you first meet him in the original game. So the end of chapter 1, or the end of the first section of the game, or midway through.
Mhm.
I don't even actually remember math. And then he pops in time to time, and there's this whole thing. They take over the radio transmissions. So they actually, in the original game, they call you on his little walkie thing that he talks to Hunnigan in. They take over and have communications with Leon back and forth throughout the game. So I think overall, you just get a lot less communication and screen time with the villains of the game. It's much more focused on Ashley and Louise and Leon as characters and their development and their dealings with the situations, and less on the cheesy back and forth between the villains. And I don't exactly know where I land on a positive/negative scale on those changes, but I just thought it was a little weird because I kept playing the game and going through it. I'm like, dude, where is Sadler? Like he talks and like you hear him communicate through Ashley and all that, which is a really cool change that they made as well. when you get split up with Ashley the second time, she just like runs away, and then those gates come up. And in this game, they show Sadler's abilities to control his subjects, and that's something you never really got a great grasp of in OG RE4. And by Ashley holding a knife to Leon and all that, and then Sadler making her walk away and trapping her. Like I said, in the original game, I forgot exactly what happened, but she just like gets scared, like pushes him off and runs away, and then gets captured, which is really dumb. But in this game, they use that scene to further emphasize how effective Sadler can be at controlling these. And I guess I just wish there was a little bit more of him in this, because his design is really cool and his presence is intimidating. You just don't nearly get as much of him in this one as you do in OG RE4. But what do you think overall?
Yeah, I will admit that I do think it was a little weird that in the final boss, the main man, the thing that's the man that's up top, you don't really see him that much throughout the game. Like, especially, yeah,
By the
again, you
way,
don't see him till like the
his name is Osmond Sadler.
Ozma. Okay, well, yeah, you just don't really see him until like the very end of the game, and I do think that is a little weird. Um, I don't really know how bad it is because like it didn't really hurt my opinion on him. I still think he's probably not the weakest, but he's not as good as like Krauser was for me because you get to see Krauser a little bit more. So I think maybe that is one detriment to him as a character, especially since he's the final boss. I think maybe he should have gotten a little bit more screen time, maybe, or showed up a little bit earlier in the story. Especially, I know supposedly like maybe he could have showed up like when you get to the castle for the first time at some point. I just don't. I'm not a huge fan of like how they just kind of showed him at the very end, basically. Like he shows up in the like last act or so, and it's not enough time to really build him up. Like all we get is little flash things of him, but that's not enough to build him up to be like, okay, what is this villain? Like, why is he so menacing? And yeah, when he does show up though, he does mean business. Shit goes down every time he shows up, and he kind of controls the room very quickly. And I especially love all the scenes he's in too. I think he does an insanely good job, especially when he takes control of Ashley and basically almost tries to get her to kill Leon with the pistol. And that scene is so badass, especially because you see that the inexperience of Ashley with guns and the fact that she gets the gun jammed, and that's the only reason she doesn't shoot Leon. And that's badass. That's cool. Again, that's very important details, and it's phenomenal. And so I don't know. I guess it really isn't a negative because when he does finally show up, he is very menacing. He does make his case, and he does show up throughout. So it's kind of like this mystery of seeing him. So I guess if you haven't played the originals, it's a lot more of a mystery. But if you have played the originals, you're probably like, where the hell is he? So I don't know. I didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah, because
This
like
boss fight was pretty tough, but again, as I said, was fair and pretty enjoyable.
oh, his boss fight's so cool, dude.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's really cinematic. It's really badass. It's also kind of dynamic in the fact that like sometimes if you don't like hit him enough, he will actually destroy certain pathways. Like you can actually do it to the where he doesn't destroy those pathways. And it's cool. It's very dynamic. It's fun. It's difficult. It took me like 3 tries, I think, on my first playthrough. And again, it's fair and it's fun. And yeah, I think he has a pretty badass little end to him. And he has the classic Resident Evil end to any boss RPG. Classic,
RPG to the
as
face.
always. Yeah, as always. So
Yeah, but you were talking about that scene with pretty much the culmination of all his controlling tactics, right before you end up administering the cure with Leon and Ashley, and that scene with the gun, and that's again a brand new scene, and I was tensed up. I was like, what the hell is
yeah.
happening? And I don't know if it's more of her experience that the gun gets jammed. I actually think it ran out of ammo.
No, it's an inexperience. So she was limp wristing the pistol. I actually watched a video on it. She was limp
Okay.
wristing it because she has no experience with guns. So when she's fighting back, so she shoots the 2 girls, and because she's like limp wristing it, it jams the bullet, and you can even see it because when Leon finally picks up the pistol, you see the bullet in the
Okay.
yeah, and he
The
pulls it
chamber.
out. Yeah, the chamber. It was literally right on the end, and yeah, he pulls it back and it pops out. So yeah, that's pretty badass. I like that. Again,
Well, yeah.
it's a very tiny detail, and especially if you're a gun person, you'll see that. It's pretty fucking cool. I like that. It's a
Yeah.
good little detail.
Like I said, Sadler as a character in this remake is still a great character. I just wish we got more of him throughout the game. Because, like, even at the end, he shows his ability to control you as a player, where he's showing you that things when you're making your final push to Luis's lab. He's showing you all
Mhm.
these things in an attempt to get you to stop and to freak you out, and you just have to kind of push through it as a character. And again, brand new to the remake. None of
And
that's in
that
the
scene was so cool. I
yeah, and
loved it.
it was just, again, I'm not saying he's bad at all. I actually think he's much improved in terms of a character. You just don't get enough. All right, final character, the one in the red dress looming over all this story, Mrs. Ada Wong, hottie herself. Sorry, that was inappropriate. But as a
Yeah, she is.
character, again,
Mhm.
you know, we feel like we're a broken record. Just more detail, more backstory. You understand why she's there much more than in the original one, and especially with the end credit scene, you get a whole different setup with who she is as a character in her role in this story and moving forward in Resident Evil. And overall, I just think it's really, really, really good. Like, yes, her voice performance isn't that great, but I think her characteristics and like who she is and her role to play, you find out so much more in this, and you understand a lot more. And it says that when you get to that end credit scene, you're kind of like, oh, hell yeah, good for you. You know, turn
Yeah,
your back on them.
she actually changed her mind and everything, and yeah, I mean, I don't really I don't think she really did much. I don't know. Like again, it's not even about her voice acting. I just don't. Surprisingly, though you said she's in this a lot, I don't feel like she really is that much into this game.
Well,
She
she's in
barely
it a lot
showed.
more than the original.
Yeah, yeah. Like she's not really. She doesn't really do much other than just be there at the right moment, kind of thing. Um, and that's cool, you know. And it's also a little interesting to see that she kind of. I know a little bit of Resident Evil 2 and what happens to her, and how she died, but clearly she didn't die. Um, and her changing as a person. Anyway, she keeps pushing it off like, oh, I'm still the same. I'm still here to do a job, but clearly she cares about Leon, and clearly she shows that throughout the game multiple times. And she goes out of her way. She's even stopping her own mission and almost compromising her entire mission to basically constantly help Leon out. And
And I
I thought
think
it was really well done. I thought it was really good, and that's nothing about her voice acting. Obviously, we already talked about that. But I think her as a character in general, it's this cool like very slightness to like she clearly truly cares about Leon and truly cares about doing the right thing, even though she plays it off like she's some rough and tough badass mercenary that only does things for herself, but in reality clearly and that's a good thing. Again, that goes with the whole fact that she's changing as a person. Like a lot of these characters in this game, they're all trying to change from their past, and she's definitely trying to change from her past in Resident Evil 2, especially with that end credit scene where she's like, no, fuck this, we're going somewhere else, we're not doing that, I'm not gonna risk a ton of people being in danger because of this asshole. So
yeah. And I think, you're talking about how she keeps trying to help Leon and all that, which she does help him in the original one. She just pops up out of
well, yeah,
nowhere
yeah.
sometimes. And every single time she does, she's like, hey, why don't you hop on the helicopter? Why don't you get on the jet ski? Why don't you come with me? And Leon always says no. And in this one, much more than the original one, at least for me, it's clear that she's sad that he doesn't go with her. She wants him to go with her and to be with her and to join her on his adventure, join her on her adventures.
Hmm.
I keep saying that wrong. She wants him to join her on her adventures. There we go. And
Yeah.
I think that comes through a lot more in this than it ever did before. And again, it's just broken record over and over again. There's just more. There's more detail, more backstory, more development, more understanding of who these characters are and why they're here in this situation. And we're coming to the end of this now, and it's just all spectacular. And we're not even throwing in Mike, me, old helicopter guy, comes in out of
Yes.
nowhere. Awesome scene. It's awesome scene in the original one. It's awesome scene in this one. Sucks that he had to die in the way he did, but he's the real hero of this story, let me tell you.
Yes.
Because how was Leon going to
Hey,
get through
let's
that
get a
without him?
drink after this.
Oh, dude, it's so good.
Last words, famous last words.
Oh,
Damn.
so good. How was Leon going to get through the island without Mike?
I know, right?
Yeah, he's the real
Yeah,
hero of Resident Evil 4.
I had no idea about that at all. I did not see that coming whatsoever. So when he did show up, I'm like, fuck yeah. I was like, man, that's a lot of enemies I'm about to go through. And then when he shows up, I'm like, all right, I see what you're doing. All
He just
right,
mows him
we
down.
got some support. Yeah, and it was really badass when he does finally show up, dude. He just destroys everything. So
I guess
yeah, I mean,
there's technically one last character, Hunnigan, but she's in this one so much less than the original one to the point that it's not even really worth mentioning her, other than the fact that she summons Mike eventually. But
yeah,
she's in it so much less than the original one. It's honestly kind of bewildering why she's just not here. I guess they decided.
yeah. I was wondering that because I'm like, yeah, she kind of shows up a bit at the beginning and then she falls off completely by the end, and I'm like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah. All right.
that's cool.
Well, that brings us to the end of our story and narrative discussion, which essentially brings us to the end of this review. As anything else you want to point out? I mean, we skipped over a couple things. I wanted to talk about some of the changes to the castle layout, but not needed.
We can talk for days about
Yeah.
this game, but I feel like we've really hit all the key points.
Yeah.
Why we think what we did. But yeah.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this does in fact bring us to the end of our review. Everyone who has either been watching or listening, we just want to take this time and thank you, as always, for listening and following along with this review. Don't forget to go over to our weekly show, the XP Podcast, and check that out to stay up to date on all the video game news coming your way and see what Logan and I have to say about it. As always, we would greatly appreciate it. Mr. Birdman, any last words?
Thank you guys for stopping by. I hope you guys enjoyed this review of Resident Evil 4. If you guys do like our reviews, or maybe you have things we could probably change or fix on these, please comment down below. Give us a like, maybe a dislike. And especially if you did like it, give us a subscribe, because again, we're trying to hit that 200 subscriber mark. It did look like we did gain a few subscribers the other day, about 4, so we went up to 32. That's awesome. I'm very excited. I'm happy to see more people joining our community, and I'm really happy to see that again. But yeah, thank you guys for stopping by. Especially appreciate any one of you guys sticking through the entire review. Yeah, I guess. Oh, I want to shout out one person, especially our Patreon Platinum member, Logan Leffler. We do appreciate your support each and every month. And if you guys do want to support us by giving us $1 or so every month, we do have our Patreon linked down below. But you guys obviously do not need to do that. We will appreciate you guys just stopping by and listening and hopefully enjoying our content. But yeah, and if you do subscribe to our Patreon, we do actually have on our higher tiers, we do have extra content as well. So if you want to hear more of us, there you go. So I'm gonna bring it back to Mike so we can close this out, and you guys will be seeing us pretty soon, actually.
Once again, thanks everyone for listening and following along with us. This has been another review brought to you by us here at the XPerience Point. I hope everyone has a great day and week, and we'll talk to you on the next one. I'm gonna go play bingo.
Hell yeah.
See you guys.